Okay, this is Chapter 7, Lesson 3, Angles Formed by Lines Cut by a Transversal. It's a very long name for a very easy topic. So, some vocab for us. A transversal. A transversal is a line that cuts through two or more other lines. Okay, so I want you to envision, maybe I can draw you a nice little diagram here. Pretend that we have two lines. Here they are. And we have a third line that crosses through both of them. That third line would be called the transversal. Okay, next vocab word, alternate exterior angles. These are outside angles, and what that means is angles that lie on the outside of our two lines, and they sit diagonally from each other. So if I put a couple numbers in here, this will make a little bit more sense. So let me do this. Okay, so alternate exterior angles, they're outside angles, so angles that sit on the outside of the two lines and they sit diagonally from each other. So we'd be talking about angle 1 and angle 5, outside and diagonal. We could also be talking about angle 4 and angle 8, outside and diagonal from each other. Alternate interior angles are inside angles that sit diagonally from each other. So now we're on the inside of the lines. Alternate interior angles, inside angles that sit diagonally, so angle 2 and angle 6, or angle 3 and angle 7. So they're on the inside and they sit diagonal. Corresponding angles, angles that sit in matching positions. So matching means that if I'm talking about the top angle in this X, I'm talking about the top angle in the other X as well. So picture the X like we would for vertical angles. So angle 1 is the top angle. Angle 3 is also on the top of that X, so they would be corresponding angles. Angle 2 is on the right. Angle 4 is also on the right, so they would be corresponding angles. Angle 7 is on the bottom. Angle 5 is also on the bottom, so they would be corresponding angles. Angle 8 is on the left. Angle 6 is also on the left, so they would be corresponding angles. Okay, so corresponding just means matching. So here are some very important notes. Probably our most important note here talks about when a transversal cuts through parallel lines. So if we know these two lines are parallel, and by the way, this would be line M and line N, and these are a congruent or a parallel line symbol, right? Those two caret kind of symbols, they tell us those two lines are parallel. When that happens, our corresponding angles are congruent, the alternate interior angles are congruent, and the alternate exterior angles are congruent. And remember what this word congruent means. It means that they have equal measurements. So that's a huge note. This is very important. I would put a star by this in your notes so that you know that this whole thing comes together when those two lines are parallel, that the corresponding angles have the same measurement. Alternate interior angles are the same. Alternate exterior are the same. So let's do a little bit of examples. First, it says name all pair of corresponding angles. Remember, corresponding means matching. So corresponding angles would be angles that sit in matching positions. So I've got this X and this X, and if I put one X on top of the other X, the corresponding angles would match up. So angle 1 and angle 5 are corresponding. Angle 1 and angle 5. Angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding. Angle 4 and angle 8 are corresponding. And angle 3 and angle 7 are corresponding. Remember, they're matching positions. Now, name all pair of alternate interior angles. So interior means that they sit on the inside of my two lines, and alternate means that they are diagonal from each other. So we're talking about angle 3 and angle 6. We also could be talking about angle 4 and angle 5. Number 3, name all pairs of alternate exterior angles. Exterior means we're on the outside of the two lines. So we're talking about angles 1 and 2, 7 and 8. And alternate tells us that they're diagonal from each other. So angle 1 is diagonal from angle 8. So they are alternate exterior. Angle 2 is diagonal from angle 7. So they are also alternate exterior angles. Now we're getting some review stuff here. Name an angle supplementary to angle 5. So I'm going to trace angle 5 here. To find a supplementary angle, take one of those two rays and continue it to see where the straight angle is. So here's my straight angle. Angle 5 and angle 7 are pushed together to find that straight angle, to make that straight angle, so they are supplementary. So an angle supplementary to angle 5 is angle 7. We also could have done this to the opposite ray, and we could have found that angle 5 and angle 6 are also supplementary. So angle 5 and angle 7, or angle 5 and angle 6. Number 5, name an angle vertical to angle 1. Remember, kicking it back to a long time ago, we talked about vertical angles. Vertical angles happen when we have an x. So I start with the angle that we're talking about, angle 1, and then I take those two rays and I extend them to find my x. So see that red x? So an angle vertical to angle 1, there's only one angle that sits across from angle 1, that's angle 4. Last but not least, this is the reason we are learning about this. This is kind of like a puzzle. I really like it. It says, find the measure of angles 1 through 7 if the measure of angle 8 is 110 degrees. And you can write these measurements right in your diagram. So if angle 8 is 110 degrees, then we already know a lot about this diagram. I am going to back up here for a second. Here is a very important note to help us with question number 6. This says assume angle M is parallel to angle N. So that's a parallel line sign right there. Knowing that those two lines, I think I said angles, I'm sorry, line M is parallel to line N. That's how I should have said. Knowing that those two lines are parallel tells me that when transversal P cuts through them, all these important angles are congruent. So that's really, really helpful. So angle 8 is 110. That tells us that angle 5 is also 110 because they are vertical angles. If angle 8 is 110, then angle 4 is also 110 degrees because they are corresponding angles. We know that the corresponding angles are congruent because these two lines are parallel. If angle 8 is 110, then angle 1 is also 110 because they are alternate exterior angles. And since these two lines are parallel, alternate exterior angles are congruent. Now, you might think we're done, but we're not. Angle 8, we extend that line segment here, that ray, we can see that angle 8 and angle 7 are supplementary. If you put those two angles together, the outside edge is a straight angle or a straight line. So that's 180 minus 110. That tells us that angle 7 is 70 degrees because they're supplementary. If angle 7 is 70 degrees, then angle 6 is 70 degrees because they are vertical angles. If angle 6 is 70 degrees, then angle 3 is also 70 degrees because they are alternate interior angles. And since these two lines are parallel, we know alternate interior angles are equal, congruent. And if angle 6 is 70 degrees, then angle 2 is also 70 degrees because they are corresponding angles. And the corresponding angles are congruent because these two lines are parallel. So that's just one way to kind of find all those angles out. But isn't it neat that we can have one angle and we can solve all 7 just because we know that lines M and N are parallel and that transversal cuts through them? Play around with this. Definitely make your flashcards, guys. This is a lot of vocab. It's pretty intense vocab now, and it's going to be a huge, huge, huge vocab section on your test. So make sure you know them. Go ahead and do your practice problems and ask any questions in class tomorrow.